I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, here with Paolo Sorrentino, the director, writer, and producer of Italy's entry for Best International Feature Film at the 94th Academy Awards, The Hand of God. Paolo, this is being called your most personal film to date. It's inspired by your childhood in Naples. I'm curious how closely it mirrors your actual life experience, and why did you decide to tell this story now?
Il film si avvicina molto, i sentimenti sono completamente autentici. Ho deciso di raccontarlo adesso perché avendo compiuto 50 anni ho pensato che fosse il tempo di bilanci e c'era la giusta distanza per affrontare senza troppa retorica temi così privati e personali.
The movie is very close to the reality. The feelings are fully authentic, and I decided to tell this story now because since I turned 50, I decided the time has come to take stock, and there was the right distance to tackle without too much rhetoric such personal and private issues.
And it is a painful story. We see a teenage Fabietto lose both of his parents, and there's also a storyline of his aunt Patrizia dealing with mental illness. But there's also a lot of comedic elements to the film, and I found myself laughing throughout it. Do you find that healing to navigate tragedy with an element of humor? Because it felt very balanced in that way.
È un po' come funziona la vita. O meglio, come ha funzionato la mia vita da adolescente. Ero in una famiglia gioiosa, l'adolescenza era un momento di spensieratezza e, come alle volte succede, questa gioventù spensierata si interrompe e irrompe il dolore. Per questo il film è diviso in due parti, una prima parte di commedia, una seconda parte invece molto più drammatica.
Well, it is the way life works, or at least the way my life worked. I came from a family that was very joyful, and as a teenager, I was very carefree. And sometimes the way life is, this carefree youth comes to an end, and that's why the movie is divided in two parts. First part, which is very joyful, and the second part, which is pervaded by drama.
It's such a fantastic ensemble cast. Each character is so unique and captivating in their own way. And there are multiple scenes where so many are interacting at the same time. How do you prepare as a director for scenes to have so much going on at once? Because it looks natural and seamless, but it has to be complicated to film. When there's so many moving parts and characters that are grabbing your eye.
Non mi sono preparato molto per girare quelle scene, nella misura in cui ho preferito cogliere la spontaneità degli attori. Quindi ho messo la macchina da presa sugli attori di volta in volta e ho lasciato che loro fossero spontanei. Ho seguito gli attori, non ho fatto sì che gli attori seguissero la macchina da presa. Ecco.
I didn't prepare very much to shoot those scenes because I preferred to grasp the actors' spontaneity. Therefore, I put the camera on the actors time after time, and I let them be spontaneous. So it's not like I didn't want for the actors to follow the camera. I followed the actors.
And this is in no way a sports film, but the city of Naples really rallies around football, or soccer as Americans call it. For some reasons, we're the only one doing that. But you stated that that had a great impact on you as a kid as well. What did that mean to you growing up watching football and great athletes like Diego Maradona, who is referenced in this film?
Il calcio per noi gli europei, per noi italiani, per noi, insomma, il calcio è una delle cose che ci fanno stare al mondo, è una possibilità, è una delle possibilità che la vita offre di giocare con serietà. In questo senso il calcio è molto simile al cinema. è un gioco che va fatto e va seguito con grande serietà. E per me è stato, come dire, il calcio è stato la premessa per arrivare al cinema.
Well, soccer for us Europeans or for us Italians is one of the things that allow us to be in the world. It's one of the opportunities that life offers you to play in a serious way. And in this way, soccer is very similar to cinema for me. It is a game that must be handled with a very serious attitude. And for me, soccer was the premise that allowed me to get to cinema.
And one of the other fascinating things I found about this film was the little monk. It just added a lot of mystery and maybe a little magic to the film. What did the little monk represent to you?
Per me il Monascello, essendo una leggenda, essendo una invenzione non reale, nel film rappresenta la possibilità di entrare nel mondo della fantasia, nel mondo del non reale. Anche questa leggenda del Monascello che c'era nella mia famiglia, che c'è nella famiglia di molti napoletani, è uno dei primi passi, è stato uno dei primi passi per me per entrare a contatto con un mondo, con un'altra realtà, che poi è la realtà della creatività, dell'invenzione. Non esiste un prete bambino. Il fatto che esista nella leggenda fa sì che io possa cominciare a capire da bambino come maneggiare la realtà per farne poi del cinema.
For me, The Little Monk, since it is something that is not real, it's a legend, well, it corresponds to the possibility of entering the world of imagination, to go beyond the reality. And this was a legend that was very deeply felt in my family, and it is so for a lot of Neapolitans. And it was one of my first steps into dealing with a world that goes beyond reality, the world of imagination, of creativity. And the fact that a priest or monk that is a little boy does not exist in reality, but it does exist in a legend, allowed me to understand as a young child how to start off with reality and then turn it into cinema.
And just one final question is, what are you hoping people take away from this film after seeing it? What emotions did it bring up for you that you're hoping to share with the world?
Mi auguro che gli spettatori possano ridere. Non dimentichiamo che il cinema è una delle poche arti che fa ridere. La pittura, la scultura riescono molto meno in questo senso, e anche la musica. E mi auguro che un pubblico di ragazzi possa comprendere un'idea molto semplice, che nonostante tutte le difficoltà, gli ostacoli e i dolori che si possono incontrare quando si è adolescenti, si può comunque intravedere un'idea di futuro. Il futuro c'è, si aspetta, bisogna arrivarci con pazienza, ma c'è. Anche quando mi ricordo quella sensazione molto forte di quando si ha 16, 17, 18 anni, il futuro non c'è, ma invece c'è.
Well, I would like for the viewers to laugh. Let's remember that cinema is one of the few arts that allow people to laugh. Painting or sculpture are not all that successful in this direction, and music isn't either. So I also hope that an audience of young kids can understand a very simple idea, and that is that in spite of all the pain and the suffering that one can go through as a teenager, one can still get a glimpse of the future. The future is there, and the future is waiting for you. One has to be patient, but I do recall very vividly that sensation that I had around, or the people have around the age of 16 or 17, when one feels that the future is not there, there's no future, and yet there is.
Well, Paolo, thank you so much for your time and good luck with everything this season. It was great to chat with you about this beautiful film, The Hand of God, and good luck. I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, here with Maria Schrader, the writer and director of Germany's entry for Best International Feature Film at the 94th Academy Awards. I'm Your Man. It's quite a unique film in that the main character, Dr. Alma Felser, agrees to participate in a 3-week study to test out a robot who's been created to be her perfect man. What inspired this storyline for you and made you want to create this film?
Hi, Denton. I think it was the simplicity of the setup. I mean, you can always explain it. At the same time, there is sometimes also a mystery. Why are we here so intrigued by an idea? And maybe it also had to do with that my project before took so long and was so much research and so many characters involved. And this one seemed to be so interesting because it's the classical boy meets girl, girl meets boy. Boy is not a boy, boy is a robot. You can create a tale about love. You can work along a romantic comedy narrative and at the same time irritated right from the start because you don't really know if you want to hope for Alma to really fall in love with the machine. It asks a lot of questions where we as writers didn't have answers ready yet while starting to investigate this. Are we humans able to, start a relationship with a machine, with a very advanced robot? Is there something like a true feeling? Is a performed feeling something less worth? I mean, all these questions, it seems like, yeah, it was just so interesting to start thinking about this.
Is that sort of the debate you wanted to start? Because I've seen comments on the internet already of, like, I saw some woman saying, like, give me my Tom now, I'm ready for him. And then some people find it horrifying. Yes. Is that the discussion you wanted people to have? And are you on one side of the coin or the other?
Well, I think, yes, it's very interesting to start a discussion about this right now, because I think we're not so far away from it. We are dealing with artificial intelligence in so many areas of our life already. And it is just, it feels like we are heading there, humanoid robots being so very well designed that we can hardly distinguish them from people. And I would consider myself, I'm very much in Alma's world. So Alma is kind of an alter ego, I think. And I would instantly be saying, oh my God, no, never, 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 ever. But then, that is also so interesting, being busy with this thought and being also busy with this film and being busy with, the making of it, and the constant thought is interesting and definitely changes us. And, for me as an actor and as a filmmaker, it's been always interesting. Is there really, what is it that the truth about our feelings, our instincts, about love? Of course, the movie asks the question, aren't we also programmed, to fulfill the needs and desires of our partners who we lived with since a couple of years? What Alma is asked to to live with this machine for 3 weeks to be able to estimate if he might become a valid member of society, you know, carry passports, being able to marry, to work, to travel. And what was, of course, a very conscious decision here is to not go the traditional way of narratives that the creature tries to free itself from slavery and starts a battle against his creator, but inventing Tom as a robot, as a peaceful, non-threatening individual who might be even much more civilized than the human.
And he's not trying to escape. He's actually sort of doing the opposite and trying to continuously impress her more and more and fix himself if he can to keep her interest. And that leads to a lot of the humor in the film as well. I mean, he's bluntly honest, which sometimes angers her. What was, you know, the most fun scenes for you to shoot, or the funniest scenes that you remember shooting?
Well, of course, already while writing, we had great fun to start with this blind date. You know, to have this old-fashioned ballroom, two people meet, and you really don't know who's more weird here, because she, of course, knows who she will be meeting. So she's prepared with these weird questions, this catalog of questions, and he is programmed with flirting tools and compliments. And it's great fun, of course, if you think, all right, so what kind of compliment would a machine be programmed with? And yeah, generally, I mean, it's a bizarre character. It's this weird mixture of masculinity and complete naivety, right? It's
almost childlike.
Yeah, I always dreamt of, you know, this perfect man designed for Alma. He should be a very good-looking guy, of course, you know, someone everyone can agree on, this kind of gentleman, Cary Grant, Jimmy Stewart, timeless, you know, appearance, and then in the inside, almost a baby trying to make it right for her, and not driven by egotistic interests, right? Not being sarcastic, not being ambitious in the human way, right? And that is touching, and that is fun, and that is also sad. And in the best, I mean, I was always dreaming of that at one point the audience will feel for him too in his own bubble of loneliness, which is a different one than Alma's.
And Maren Eggert and Dan Stevens are the leads of this film, and they're both so great in their roles. What was it about each of them that captured the essence you were looking for in these characters?
Maren is a Berlin-based actor, and I am Berlin-based, and I know her work since forever, and we've been on the same stage, and I always loved her work, but I still asked her to audition for this, and I just fell in love with the way she approached this character. I fell in love with how human she did it, and how unpredictable, and how fluid it was between humor and drama. And she would just, you know, enter scenes in the best unprepared way. And on the contrary, I discovered in the work of Dan Stevens such a precision. And I met him via Zoom because we were one of the first productions allowed to start working during the pandemic. So we met like we meet in a Zoom meeting, and we were thinking about Tom, and you know, the greatest challenge probably for Dan was to make the machine visible, and I also thought maybe it's much more interesting throughout the movie, even if you start falling in love with him, even if you start hoping for them to, despite all odds, that you always have these irritating moments that you're reminded, no, he's not human, he doesn't breathe, he's a machine, and so we worked on that and developed this kind of repertoire for me to be able on set to say, Dan, have it a bit more robot, have it a bit less machine, have it a bit more human. So we played around with this, and of course, I mean, Tom develops and he becomes more and more human, and he becomes more and more sophisticated and understanding the needs of Alma. And so that was basically fun.
Well, it's definitely a fascinating and thought-provoking and funny film. Maria, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us today. Good luck with everything this season. And it was great chatting with you about I'm Your Man.
Thank you.
I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, here with Jan Matuszynski, the director of Poland's entry for Best International Feature Film at the 94th Academy Awards, Leave No Traces. Jan, this film is a historical drama that takes place in 1983 when a high school student is beaten to death by a police in communist Poland. What made you want to bring this story to the screen now, and how did you decide who you wanted to work with on this project?
Well, I was looking for a next project after my previous film, The Last Family, and one of the things I got in my hands from my producers was a book called Leave No Traces, a reportage book, and that was available because, after the communist regime ended in Poland, the government opened some of the archives so people could go and see what really happened in the 80s, and that's one of the stories. And of course, it's also because of the witness who saw it all, and he's the main character of Leave No Traces. For me, this story is kind of symbolic. It's actually like a crime against humanity. When you hear those kind of things, it's it's hard to cope with that kind of thing. I think it's, I got this book in 2017, and that was a bit of a different time in the world in Poland. But although I was born in 84, so a year after it all happened, when I was going through the book, I had this feeling that it's something that can happen just around the corner. And if I can do a film about it, cinema is the only tool I got. I'm a film director, so what can I do? And I thought that, I have to go with this one, because this is an important thing. Because I don't want those things, to come back and happen ever again. Although if you, look around the world, it's not really, it's somewhere there, all those stories happening, like, George Floyd, for example, you have events like this all around the world now.
Yeah, it's really relevant to anyone watching from any part of the world, which is unfortunate. Were you concerned about potential pushback or the risk of bringing up a story like this again and sort of rehashing it?
It's always a risk, because when you're taking up a true story, which is, based on real events, you have to cope with this, that this is your interpretation and only yours, right? So somebody else, and this is a story that happened, almost 40 years ago in Poland, but there's the people, involved somehow on both sides of the barricade that are alive and around, and we had to deal with that too. And the thing that is in Leave No Traces, one of the crucial parts is that, the beating part, that's a huge problem, that's a tragedy, but it's getting more and more, it's getting worse when it turns out that this is getting political, and everything is political nowadays. So I knew that this is tricky, but I didn't have a choice. I just, love the story. I thought that this is something that I can tell on a big screen.
And was that daunting to tell that big of a story on the big screen? Because there is a lot to deal, there's a lot to handle. There's a lot of scenes to shoot. It's quite a long film. So was that process daunting in and of itself?
Yeah, we had like a very quick conversation with my producers. Should it be a TV series or a film? And we decided very fast, early on that it has to be a film because it's so important. And it's multi-layered, it's complex, but that's how I want it to be. And I see after all those reactions when you hear like Todd McCarthy telling you that he can talk all night, couple of hours about this film. It's great to hear that it works, right? And when I read the book for the first time, I had this idea that maybe we should just follow the mother. But that would be a very intimate, narrowed way of telling this story. And what I was really interested in is, the big question: what does it mean, the whole truth? Yeah. What did he really see? What does it mean that he saw? Can you see everything? Can you tell everything in court? How it really happened? Those kind of things. This is like the level that I got interested in, and on some level, which works both together, I think, is that this is sort of a coming of age story too, because the main character has to grow up to take his own decisions. This is what the fight is all about, because the government wants to cover it up. And the main thing that he has to do is to just make him change his testimony. So it's all about, bringing truth outside to the world. And it's a great theme, I think.
And Tomasz Zajtek gives an incredible performance. He's the lead witness in the film, the main character, the survivor who saw his friend brutally beaten to death. What was it about Tomasz that stood out to you and made you want to cast him for this project? Because it's a substantial role.
I really love actors. I think that acting is a very hard job, and I knew that Leave No Traces needs a lot of great actors in it, and the main lead needs a young guy. So I was looking around what we have in Poland, and Tomasz Zajtek was my first and only choice. I have to say, I saw him in Silent Night. I saw him in Corpus Christi. He was the bad guy in Corpus Christi, and we just had a couple of hours of rehearsals, and I knew that this should be him. I had to connect him with the father, who's played by Jacek Braciak, and that's how it all went. And the cast in this film, if we're talking about Polish industry, we have like 2/3 out of every great actor in it, because I'm sure you recognize Tomasz Kot, who was in Cold War, Aleksandra Konieczna, who played also in Corpus Christi, but she played also in my previous film, The Last Family. She's here playing the prosecutor, very, very harsh, rough, character. And I could name, a lot of actors. I had this joke that we casted almost every actor in his 20s, in his 50s in Poland, because there's so many, because people who were in power in that time in Poland were men around 50.
I love that scene where the prosecutor is just eating at the desk while she's talking about how serious the case is. She was really great to watch. In terms of the real life people involved, did you have communication with any surviving family members or anyone who knew the people portrayed in the film, or is that something that they want to stay away from?
We have a bunch of characters here, and I heard from my friend who's also a director that the prosecutor played by Aleksandra Konieczna, she was just exactly like that. And I was so terrified when I heard it, because I knew that from the papers, from the documents, but when you hear something like this, you're always terrified, because that kind of people, are somewhere around. And the main character is based on a real person, but we had to change his ID a bit to make it a bit simple in terms of telling this story. And he's actually one of the guys who don't want to talk to anyone about it, because he's, in terms of emotions and psychological part, I think he's worried. My producer talked to him on the phone, and he didn't really respond after a really long talk. But for example, the guy from the ambulance, Michał Wysocki, he was a real help. He was one of the consultants. He actually helped us, for example, when there's the scene when they are taking him out of the ambulance and going to the hospital. We had this, rehearsal with him, telling us which leg came first, how did he react to all of this. And this is the detail when you have a true story that you really want to use, you want to cope with. And of course, I had some very difficult discussions with him about what happened with him in prison.
Well, I mean, it's a powerful story that is a historical for Poland, but it really does resonate anywhere for anyone watching it. Jan, thank you for your time and chatting with me today, and good luck with everything this season. It was great talking with you about Leave No Traces.
Thank you.
I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, here with Aly Muritiba, the director and writer of Brazil's entry for Best International Feature Film at the 94th Academy Awards, Private Desert. Aly, this is such a beautiful story of love and self-discovery. What inspired you to create this film at this time in your life?
Bom, nós estamos vivendo no Brasil um momento político muito delicado. O país está separado em dois por conta do contexto político. Vivemos quase dentro de um regime fascista, em que todo o tempo as pessoas têm brigado umas contra as outras. O discurso de ódio tem sido o discurso preponderante no meu país. E esse é o motivo pelo qual eu decidi entregar para a audiência um filme de amor. Acho que falar de amor num momento tão difícil em meu país é uma espécie de testemunho, de testamento de que o cinema pode ser uma ferramenta muito importante para combater o fascismo.
We are living right now in Brazil a political situation that has divided the country. We are living under a regime that is very much like a fascist regime, and there's been fighting and hate speech is on the rise. So that's why I decided to deliver a movie that is a movie of and about love. And it's a movie that talks about love. And I think it shows how cinema can be a tool in fighting things like hate speech and the fascist environment and climate that Brazil has been under recently.
And the main character, Daniel, is a discharged police officer who was fired for brutality. And I've read that you worked as a prison guard previous to becoming a filmmaker. So I was curious if that influenced you and how you portrayed Daniel's character, and what did working in a prison teach you?
Bom, eu trabalhei como agente prisional durante 7 anos e ali eu convivi durante esse período com pessoas muito conservadoras, com pessoas que costumam ser consideradas, em meu país e acho que em geral, como as opressoras, mas eu também pude ver que essas pessoas podem ser boas pessoas, podem ter bons sentimentos e podem fazer boas ações. Assim como o protagonista de meu filme, que é um policial que é comumente visto em meu país como um opressor, mas que é transformado pelo poder do amor numa pessoa mais tolerante. E o meu filme é basicamente um filme sobre tolerância. Durante esses 7 anos de trabalho na prisão, acho que a maior lição que eu aprendi foi a lição da tolerância, foi como é possível encontrar humanidade, como é possível encontrar beleza nos lugares mais brutalizados, como é o caso de uma prisão.
I worked in a penitentiary for about 7 years. And during that time, I lived with people and got to meet a lot of people that are considered conservative and are seen as the oppressors. And I noticed by living with them that they can be also good and do good things, that no one is just one thing. And just like the protagonist of my film, who is a cop and in Brazil seen as the oppressor and more of like an evil force, but who is transformed by the power of love. And this is what the movie is about to me, tolerance. And the biggest lesson that I learned while working in a prison for 7 years is tolerance and the ability to find beauty in situations that may seem like they lack beauty.
And the film does examine that, and it's really also about masculinity and what that even means. It's not always black and white. You've got Daniel, who sort of represents every stereotype of what it means to be a man, or at least he's trying to project that, but that begins to crack and break down gradually and expose more vulnerable sides of himself. Can you talk about that?
Bom, como todos podem imaginar, o Brasil, a América Latina em geral, mas o Brasil em especial, é um país muito machista e um país onde a cultura patriarcal é predominante. Então, quando você nasce um homem num país como o Brasil, você aprende desde muito cedo a expressar suas emoções, seus sentimentos, pela via da opressão e pela via da violência. Eu sou uma dessas pessoas. Eu nasci numa pequena cidade no interior do Brasil, trabalhei durante muito tempo como um agente penitenciário e fui ensinado a manifestar as minhas emoções e os meus sentimentos de uma maneira muito opressora. E desde que eu tive uma filha, isso passou a me incomodar muito e eu comecei a refletir em meu cinema. Esse é o terceiro filme que eu faço sobre masculinidade tóxica. Comecei a refletir em meu cinema como é possível fazer com que os homens possam expressar suas emoções de uma forma mais tolerante, de uma forma mais amável. E Deserto Particular é a culminância dessa minha pesquisa, dessa minha busca por um homem mais amável, por um homem menos opressor.
As most of us know, in Latin America, and specifically Brazil, is a very sexist country. It's a country where the patriarchal culture really dominates all of society. And it's a country where if you were born a man, you are encouraged to express your feelings through oppression and violence. And I am one of these people. As a man, I also fell into this trap, this category. I was born in a small city and I was encouraged to express my feelings through these less tolerant or intolerant means. And since I had a daughter, that started to really bother me. And this is actually the third movie that I make about toxic masculinity. And I've been trying to use my cinema to find ways of how can men express their emotions in a more tolerant, humane way. I've been using my cinema as almost like a research tool for this. And Private Desert is the climax of my research in this field of tolerance and toxic masculinity as well.
And I would like to talk briefly about the scenery of Brazil. It's not necessarily the parts of Brazil that people see all of the time. It's not the beach. It's not a fun party. It's very rural. It's warm. It's at least for me, was a different side of the country. Can you talk about the Brazil that you wanted to portray in this film?
Bem, eu vivo no sul do Brasil, que é a parte mais fria, que é a parte do Brasil com uma forte presença da colonização europeia, polonesa e ucraniana, mas eu nasci e cresci no nordeste do Brasil, que é a parte que nós chamamos de sertão, que é aquela parte mais quente. E o que eu faço nesse filme é juntar esses dois mundos, o mundo do sul, que é esse mundo mais frio, mais cinza, também politicamente mais conservador, com o mundo do nordeste do Brasil, que é um mundo muito mais quente, mais pobre, mas ao mesmo tempo muito mais progressista. E são os lugares em que eu vivi e vivo, e para mim era importante que essa história de amor, que para mim é uma espécie de manifesto, se passasse nesses lugares que fazem parte de minha vida. E eu tinha muito interesse em mostrar para a audiência diferentes partes do Brasil, um Brasil diferente do que se vê comumente nas telas. Normalmente se vê no exterior filmes brasileiros que se passam no Rio de Janeiro ou em São Paulo, e a mim interessava mostrar o quão diverso e quanta beleza e diversidade existe no nosso país.
I currently live in the south of Brazil, which is a colder place. It's a place where you can see the colonization, our European colonization more present, lots of immigration from European countries as well. But I was born and raised in the northeast of Brazil, what we call Sertão, so the interior, the outback, one may say, which is a place that's a lot hotter. And it was interesting for me to unite these two different worlds. So on one side, we have the cold, gray, conservative south of Brazil, which is where the protagonist lives. And then on the other side, we have the northeast, which is warmer. It is poorer, but in a way, a lot more progressive as well. And these are places that are part of my life and places where I've lived in. So it was important to me to bring this love story, to tell this love story, which I kind of see as a manifesto as well, in these places that were and are a part of my life. It was interesting to me to show a different Brazil. I think that outside of Brazil, internationally, when one sees movies about Brazil, it's often Rio or São Paulo, but the diversity and beauty of Brazil served me in the story and interested me. And it was a tool that I used to tell this love story.
Well, it was beautiful to watch. And Aly, thank you for your time. Good luck with everything this season. And thank you so much for chatting with me about your film, Private Deserts.
Thank you, Denton.
I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, here with Tatiana Huezo, the director of Mexico's entry for Best International Feature Film at the 94th Academy Awards, Prayers for the Stolen. It's an emotional, intense coming-of-age story about three girls growing up in a rural village dominated by the drug trade and human trafficking. Tatiana, this is your first feature film that is not a documentary. What was it about this story in particular that compelled you to want to make your first narrative feature?
Bueno, esta película me planteaba muchos retos y muchos riesgos muy interesantes. Pienso que me emociona mucho. Cada película es un riesgo y bueno, esta película me planteaba el riesgo de hacer el reto de hacer mi primera ficción, pero sobre todo esta historia me obligaba a mirar el mundo desde los ojos de una niña. Y eso para mí fue lo más fascinante.
This story presented me with a lot of challenges and risks, a lot of risks. It was my first feature film, my first fiction. But what I loved the most was that it demanded of me to look at the world through the eyes of a young girl.
And you work on this film with a lot of child actors, unknown actors, which is a daunting task for anyone. But they were all brilliant. What was the casting process like to find the right actors to bring this story to life and give it so much emotion?
Bueno, debo decir algo más, que es para mí muy importante, que esta historia se ubica en el territorio de la infancia y de la adolescencia y que estoy instalada en este universo desde hace un tiempo porque soy mamá de una niña que está creciendo y que está descubriendo el mundo. Y su voz, su magia, sus dudas, sus primeros dolores y desconciertos han sido un motor fundamental para poder construir esta historia.
I first have to say that I've been in this territory of childhood and adolescence for a while now. I'm a mother to a growing girl, and the voice, her magic, the first pains are really what have been a growing motor for me to tackle this territory and to think about these things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most memorable scenes for me was the horror on young Anna's face when she's getting her hair cut short. She doesn't quite understand why they need to keep her hair short, but that moment of her crying and that just really stuck with me. How were you able to pull such emotion from this young actress, Ana Cristina Ordóñez González? I mean, she was really fantastic.
Ok, el casting de esta película pienso que fue uno de los desafíos más grandes, porque la historia está compuesta por 3 mejores amigas y está contada a los 8 años y a los 14 años. Entonces yo tenía el enorme reto de encontrar a 3 pequeñas de 8 años y a sus clones adolescentes. Y para mí era fundamental que las niñas que yo iba a encontrar compartieran rasgos esenciales de los personajes. Y el más importante de ellos era que deberían pertenecer a un ámbito rural.
One of the biggest things with the casting of this film and the biggest challenge was that I had to find 6 girls. The story takes place when these 3 girls are 8 years old and then when they are 14 years old. And I had to find them at 8 years old, and then I had the challenge of finding their 3 clones. And it was fundamental for me to get this casting right, and something that I wanted to make sure was that these girls shared certain characteristics of the characters. And one of the things that I did not want to compromise was that I wanted them to belong to this rural setting.
Y debo decir que esta escena del pelo de la que hablas fue una de las escenas que preparé con una gran concentración. Yo sabía que tenía que ser un plano muy largo frente a Ana, que es nuestra niña protagonista, en donde ella iba a perder su hermosa cabellera. Por supuesto, ella sabía que esto iba a suceder desde el casting. Era una condición para ser parte de la película.
And the scene that you speak of, the scene where she gets her hair cut, it was something that I really prepared, that I really concentrated on. I knew that I wanted to have a long shot on Anna's face, on our protagonist's face, as she lost her beautiful hair. And this, of course, we had talked about, knew that this was going to happen. It was actually one of the conditions during the casting.
Debo decir que preparamos durante 3 meses a estas pequeñas, a estas 6 niñas. Tuve la fortuna de trabajar con una brasilera increíble que es Fátima Toledo, que me ayudó a prepararlas físicamente, mentalmente y a introducirlas en el universo, en las sensaciones de la película. Y específicamente la escena del pelo, sembramos como un momento emocional en Ana. Ahora lo cuento.
And I prepared with these 6 girls. I prepared them for 3 months before we actually started shooting. I had the pleasure of working with a Brazilian woman. Her name is Fátima Toledo. She helped me prepare them physically and emotionally, and introduce certain sensations about these characters. And with this scene in particular, I'm gonna go on.
Había un ejercicio que hacíamos durante la preparación, que lo hicimos solo un par de veces para no desgastar emocionalmente a Ana, y era que ella se sentaba frente a un espejo y tenía que despedirse de algo que realmente amara. Ese fue el ejercicio previo a esta escena y tenía que ser muy honesta en esta despedida. Entonces ella tuvo mucha emoción. Es una niña de 8 años y de quien se estaba despidiendo en silencio frente a este espejo antes de rodar la escena. Era de su mascota, de su pequeño perro que había muerto. Y cuando llegó el momento de hacer la escena, Ana estaba frente al espejo del salón de belleza y a mí me impresionó muchísimo cómo ella me dijo: Tati, tienes que decirme exactamente en qué momento quieres que yo empiece a llorar.
And the way we prepared Anna for this scene, we conducted an exercise with her. We only did it a couple of times. We didn't want to wear her out. And we placed her in front of a mirror and we asked her to say goodbye to something very close to her. And she was very honest. We wanted to make sure that it was an honest goodbye. And here you have this 8-year-old girl, and during these exercises, she said goodbye to her pet, a dog, her dog that had died. And at the moment of shooting the scene, I was so impressed by her. She knew exactly what I wanted. She told me, Tati, just let me know when you want me to cry. And that was so touching for me.
Y yo le dije a Ana, no tenemos prisa, Ana. Yo voy a decir exactamente en qué momento vas a empezar a despedirte de tu hermoso pelo. Pero ella tenía ya sembrada en su memoria emocional esta despedida y de esa manera trabajamos con las niñas a lo largo de la película. Partí de sus propias identidades, de sus afectos, de sus propias pérdidas.
And I told her, there is no rush, Anna. We're going to take whatever time we need. But we had already, she already had the seed of this emotional memory that we had planted in her. And that's really how we worked with them. With each one of them, we worked with themselves, with their own particular experiences.
Well, the entire cast was so beautifully acted. The scenery was fantastic as well. So I just want to congratulate you on this wonderful film. Tatiana, thank you for taking time to chat with me today about Prayers for the Stolen.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to our Gold Derby Film International Feature Panel. I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, here with Paolo Sorrentino, director of The Hand of God from Italy, Maria Schrader, director of I'm Your Man from Germany, Jan Matuszynski, director of Leave No Traces from Poland, Tatiana Huezo, director of Prayers for the Stolen from Mexico, and Aly Muritiba, director of Private Desert from Brazil. First of all, I'm so thrilled to have all of you here. Everyone's from such different backgrounds. And one of the first questions, I'm just curious, since everyone's from a different area, what inspired you first to become a filmmaker? Was there a specific director or even an actor or a film that you saw as a child that inspired you to want to get into making movies? We'll start with Paolo.
Ma io ho deciso di diventare regista. Che devo spegnere?
No, niente, vai.
Ho deciso di diventare regista perché fra tutte le arti che vedevo mi sembrava quella che necessitasse di minore preparazione. Questa è la verità.
I decided to become a filmmaker because among all the arts I saw, it seemed to be the one that required the least amount of preparation. That's the truth.
That seems hard to believe, but Maria, how about you? What was your experience?
I wanted to become an actor, and I became an actor. And from a very early age on, I didn't finish school. I went to the theater, and that is what I wanted, to be on stage. And film was very, very far away for me. And then I was very inspired by a film called Molière by Ariane Mnouchkine. I saw it when I was probably 18 years old, and she bridged theater and film. And then I became an actor in films, and only by writing my own parts. And I only wanted to write these parts to be acting. And then I became more and more interested in making it all myself.
Jan, how about you?
Well, you know, I remember when I was a little, very small kid, like 3 or 4, and my parents took me for the first time to the cinema to see a very bad film, I think, Shortcuts 2, which is kind of a remake of Pinocchio, but, you know, there's a robot and he's like fighting all the bad guys and so on and so on. And in the final scene, he dies, which practically means that his battery is just off. And I remember I cried my tears out that hard that I didn't realize that in the next scene, he's got a new battery and he's of course alive. And when we got out of the cinema, my mother told me that, and I said, oh, okay. And after a couple of years, I realized that that was like the first, you know, huge emotional experience. And now when I think why I'm doing what I'm doing is that, yeah, I want to bring that kind of emotion to the big screen. and talk to people after the screening. That's, wonderful. You can, create, you can set up your own worlds, and it's marvelous.
And Aly, how about you?
Bom, eu, na verdade, nunca imaginei que fosse me tornar um cineasta. Eu era um agente penitenciário cansado de trabalhar na penitenciária, quando decidi que precisava conhecer gente nova, que não fosse preso. E isso aconteceu, e nesse momento estavam criando uma faculdade de cinema no lugar onde eu vivo, e eu pensei, vou estudar cinema porque com certeza as pessoas que fazem cinema são muito diferentes das pessoas que estão presas. E na faculdade de cinema eu entendi que eu era um bom contador de história, e eu diria que o cinema me tirou da cadeia.
I never thought that I would become a filmmaker. I used to work in a prison and I was just tired of working. And I realized that I needed to meet new people, people that were not arrested or in jail. And they were at that time creating or coming up with a school for film, a university near my city. And I figured, oh, this is a place where I could find people that are not in jail and, connect with other people. And during my time there, I realized, I understood that I was a storyteller. And I would say that film kind of got me out of jail.
Wow. And how about you, Tatiana?
Bueno, yo debo decir que me enamoré del cine enfrente de una pantalla. Mi madre no tenía con quién dejarme, quién me cuidara. Ella es una mamá que me crió sola. Y ella amaba ir cada año a la muestra de cine que había en México, en la Cineteca Nacional.
I have to say that I fell in love with cinema in front of a screen. My mom, she wasn't able to take care of me sometimes, and she raised me by herself. So sometimes she wasn't able to take care of me, and she loved going to the National Cinemateca for their festival.
Y entonces me metía de contrabando y a la edad de 8, 10 años vi películas que fueron para mí una sacudida. Eran unos viajes intensos, emocionales y sensoriales muy profundos que me marcaron. Y yo decía, esto es algo muy poderoso y lo único que yo quiero hacer en la vida es poder hacer sentir a alguien más esto que estoy sintiendo yo.
So I would get into the theaters. I would sneak in and I would watch at the age of 8, 10 years old films that really shook me. They took me on these really intense sensatorial and emotional journeys. And I thought, this is what I have to do. I have to be able to do this. This is what I want to do.
Y las películas que me marcaron en aquella época fueron de David Lynch, como Terciopelo Azul, Alicia en las ciudades de Wim Wenders, o El miedo que devora las almas. Es una película que se quedó mucho tiempo adentro de mi alma.
And some of the films that really marked me the most was, of course, David Lynch's. There's one from Wim Wenders, The Fear That Devours the Souls, which really just was impressed in my soul.
And another question I'm just always curious about is, in terms of, what it means to you to be a filmmaker and representing a country that you're representing and being selected in this process to represent just one film for each country for Oscar consideration. What do you hope to represent for your country, and what do you hope people take away from seeing your film? We'll start with Paolo.
Spero di riuscire a comunicare nel mondo, a far capire che il mio paese è un paese molto vitale. Penso che il mio film sia pieno di vita, e questa sia una caratteristica del nostro paese. E spero che venga fuori e che possa essere conosciuta e apprezzata da tutti.
What I hope I can communicate to the world is that my country is a very lively country. I think that my film is full of life, and I think this is a characteristic of our country, and I hope that this comes out, and I hope this is a characteristic that can be known and appreciated by all.
And Maria, how about you?
It's an interesting question for me because I worked a lot abroad. My first movie I shot in, not even in German, in Israel. My second movie I shot in New York, and in very different, in 7 languages, and it represented Austria in the Oscar race because it was a co-production. And then with Unorthodox, it's a series which is not even being recognized as a German series, and it's in English and in Yiddish. So I'm Your Man, it's the first movie I do in my own language and only in German. And I never thought about what does it represent. You know, I'm now representing Germany. I always considered myself as a traveler, and I went where the stories were I was interested in. And I think I always seek for different perspectives and rather opening points of views and perspectives. And maybe it's beautiful now that I'm Your Man represents Germany, which maybe internationally is looked at a very, you know, earnest, it's nice to represent Germany with a comedy, with a playfulness and a lightness, and also with a main actor who's not German. So also with an international appeal, maybe.
And Jan, how about you?
You know, it's like Olympic Games in a way. It's an honor to represent the country. That's like first thing I feel, and I'm really honored. Yeah, that's nice. That's a great thing for a director, because you can talk to other, you know, nationalities, other countries with your film. I believe, especially now after, you know, all the COVID situation and so on, cinema is one of those things that makes people think that they're not alone. And with a story like Leave No Traces, I have a feeling that it can work everywhere, and cinema is like a proper way of putting it out there. So it's a great place to be, I have to say. And I am, especially with this one, I'm very interested how will people react. When we had our Polish premiere, I was quite surprised that people came with their kids. So I had like a 50-something-year-old woman with her daughter or son who was around 15, and they talked about the film. And I thought that I had this feeling that they're not talking about Polish film, it's just a film. And cinema is this tool that, you know, can cut out all the borders. And this is so great, because we all care about freedom, right?
Ali.
Bom, representar o Brasil com um filme queer que fala de amor nesse momento em que o país é comandado por um fascista é um testemunho, é um manifesto do cinema brasileiro, de que nós acreditamos muito que as nossas histórias e que as nossas histórias de amor é que devem ser contadas. Nos últimos anos, no exterior, as notícias que se tem do Brasil são sempre muito ruins, são sempre muito negativas. A Amazônia está sendo destruída, os direitos humanos estão sendo destruídos, a fome aumenta, a desigualdade social aumenta. E aí, nesse momento, mostrarmos para o mundo um Brasil de amor, de tolerância, de beleza, um Brasil que dança, um Brasil que sorri, um Brasil que se enamora e se apaixona, é um manifesto de que o nosso país é muito melhor do que o governo que está aí.
To be representing Brazil right now with a queer film, a movie about love, especially in this moment where our country is being presided by a fascist president. It's really a testament to Brazilian cinema and our love stories and how they deserve to be told. And I feel like international news, when they're about Brazil recently, they're mostly bad. They're about the Amazon being on fire and human rights problems, and people in Brazil are more poor, more hungry, more unhappy. And to bring this movie that is about how Brazil loves and dances and smiles and about the beauty and tolerance that our country also has, it's a testament, and it shows that Brazil is so much more than this government right now.
And Tatiana.
Ok, yo también me siento muy orgullosa de que sea Prayers for the Stolen, Noche de Fuego, que represente a México. Pienso que el cine tiene justamente, es un puente y tiene ese poder de acercarnos a otras realidades, y esta película es una ventana para mirar una de las realidades difíciles que hay en México, una realidad urgente de atender. Pienso que es una película que habla también de la rebeldía y de la magia y del profundo amor y lealtad que existe en esa etapa de la vida que es la infancia, y que también de alguna manera, y creo que esto es universal, es un homenaje a la ferocidad del amor maternal de tantas mujeres en Latinoamérica y muchas partes del mundo que están criando solas a sus hijas y dándoles herramientas para ser más libres.
I'm also very proud to be representing Mexico with Prayers for the Stolen. I feel like cinema is a bridge. It's a bridge that brings us closer to other realities. In this case, it's a difficult and urgent reality that we're going through in Mexico. But at the same time, it's also about the rebelliousness, the loyalty, the love of this stage in life of childhood. And it's also an homage to the ferociousness of a mother's love, of mothers throughout the world that are giving the tools to their children, that are raising their children on their own and are giving them the tools to be more free.
Well, I'm so thrilled to have had the five of you all together representing such beautiful, diverse stories from all over the globe. Thank you for joining this panel and working out ways to all communicate with each other so we could have this great discussion and learn from each other. I'm going to ask all of our viewers to keep coming back to Gold Derby for more interviews with inspiring panels and awards contenders. And congratulations to each and every one of you on this panel for your fantastic films this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.